Welcome, my friends, to another powerful episode of The Power of Yes. So today, let's talk about fear. Yes, you heard it. The number one reason why we stay stuck is fear. So, we can let fear dictate our actions or worse, inaction. Fear tells us that we're not ready, that we'll fail, or that we're not enough. But I am here to tell you that fear is a big fat liar. Fear is a liar. And in today's episode, we're going to break down strategies to push past the doubt and confidently say yes to the next step of your journey. So whether it's fear of failure, imposter syndrome, the fear of judgment, we're going to tackle them head on. We're also going to dive into some coaching questions that I've received over the years, really centered around overcoming fear. So if you're feeling stuck, this one is for you. All right. So today, let's really start out by talking about and understanding fear as a barrier. And listen, I know that there's been so much research that has been done lately to really help us to understand over the last, I would say, 30 some odd years. We've seen research after research that has really helped us to understand that fear is the body's mechanism of keeping you safe. That's why we have these moments to help us to understand it. It helps us, our body, like if we were still back in the hunter-gatherer mode and we were out there in the wilderness and we had to go hunting for food, fear would give you the inclination of what you needed in order to, keep yourself safe. In essence, survive. Survive. But when we start to think about where we are in our current environment and how we function from day to day, we've got to get a handle on fear and turn the noise down so that we can actually navigate and really achieve more of our potential. And so fear can be a barrier. So let's really talk about how fear keeps us stuck and really prevents action. Because I think we should understand that fear is natural, right? But I'm a true believer in the Word of God, where it says that God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind. And so in essence, there is this spirit where we feel like in our faith, where you can not fulfill your potential because you're constantly in fear or scared or limited by whatever it is, whatever the excuse is, whatever the reason is, it is limiting you. And every time you get to that point, you put the brakes on and you can't get past it because of fear. And so that prevents us from getting to where we need to go. And I love this. My mom introduced this to me, and I've heard other people say it as well, that fear is false evidence appearing real. False evidence appearing real. So in essence, what that really means, folks, is that it's not your reality. It's not the truth. So in essence, if you are afraid, I need you to ask yourself a question. Is that really real? Because fear is false evidence appearing real. But the key thing is, it's not. It's not. And so for us to get past that, we've got to understand what is our truth. What is the real? What is the reality that we're truly experiencing so that we can get past the fear? And so another piece that kind of ties itself to fear is imposter syndrome, this idea that when you step into a room, the easiest way for me to explain it is that you could step into a room of your peers, but you feel like you don't belong. You feel like somehow you snuck in and you're not supposed to be there. And you're hoping that folks don't recognize that you're not supposed to be there because you're an imposter. But the reality is that if the door has been open for you to be in this space, then you should be there. You should be there. And so there's this moment where we've got to own the room that we're in so that we can actually step into more of who and what we're supposed to be. Boy, fear's role is to keep us doubting ourselves. And if we're not careful, we can stay stuck in that spiral of doubting and second guessing ourselves to where we don't move forward. And so, my friends, I want to share it with you today. What have you been afraid of? What have you been afraid of? What have you been second guessing about yourself? Not anybody else instigating this, but you yourself, because we could either be our best advocate, our best supporter, or you already know, our worst enemy or our own saboteur. And so in order for us to get past the self-sabotaging, we've got to be able to turn down the noise of fear and its good old buddies, imposter syndrome and self-doubting and self-deprecation for all of the reasons, but for one in particular, to live a fulfilling life. And so we can only get past that if we say, come on, you know what the word is. Yes, yes, yes. If we say yes to ourselves and yes to the next opportunity. So let me just share this with you. I remember when I made the decision to leave my good old government job to start my business. And I remembered the day that I did that. I remembered this feeling of freedom that came over me. I had been toiling with this decision for months and I didn't really know all the things. And fear, of course, was playing its role to say, oh my God, what about this? And you're not going to be able to do this, and you're not going to be able to do that. And oh, what if this doesn't turn out right? And what if that doesn't turn out right? And I'm like, you know what? What if I actually succeed? What if I actually get to the other side of it? And I think about this. If I had stayed in that space, that I would have continued to undervalue who I am and let someone else take the reins of my life. Because remember, as I shared in one of the initial episodes, that the gentleman said, don't worry, Servola, in 20 years, you'll be sitting in my seat. And I had a choice in the moment that I could let someone else tell me where I'd be sitting in 20 years, or I could take ownership of my life and make the yes decision that I am going to control where I'm going to be in 20 years. And I want you to think about that. Yes, there are certain things that you can do in your life's journey to get you there. There are certain things that you must invest in yourselves. There's certain pathways that you need to explore going down in order to get to where you want to go. So don't get me wrong. We need mentors. We need coaches. We need people to help guide us. Of course we do. Because there's somebody who's way ahead of you and they have things that they can share with you to get you further faster. But that's not what we're talking about, my friends. I'm not talking about someone that doesn't want to be teachable or that doesn't want to be coached, that doesn't want to learn. I'm talking about those of us who put ourselves in this place where we are self-sabotaging ourselves from getting to where we want to go. And maybe all of that is included in that. Maybe that lack of growth is because we have allowed someone to tell us who we are instead of us taking ownership of who we are and who we want to be and how we want to show up in the world. See, my friends, that decision, that is up to you. How you show up in this world is your decision. That seat 20 years from now, which I haven't reached it yet, so I don't know what that's going to be. But I knew that it wasn't going to be up to somebody else. You know, I knew that God had given me something far more valuable than the seat that I was offered, that I could take advantage of. And so that's not about being unteachable. It's not about not wanting to be coached. It's not about any of those things. It really is about taking ownership of your life and then in turn being responsible enough to make the right decisions to get you down that pathway. It very well could have been a different pathway for me. I very well could have stayed in that spot and just let somebody else tell me, but eventually I would have felt lost and I would have lost my identity and not been able to move further.